At a high-stakes military promotion ceremony, an officer faces disrespect and ridicule in front of her peers. Just when it seems like she's being humiliated, a veteran colonel steps in and declares a statement that leaves everyone in shock. She outranks everyone. Witness the jaw-dropping moment that changes the course of the ceremony, and everyone's perception of her. The morning sun rose over Fort Harrison, casting a crisp golden light over the sprawling military base. Rows of neatly polished tanks glimmered under the sunlight, and the flags atop the headquarters fluttered proudly in the brisk autumn wind. Today was not just any day. It was the annual promotion ceremony, a day where hard work, dedication, and years of sacrifice were publicly recognized. The marble steps of the grand auditorium were lined with officers in full ceremonial dress, gleaming medals on their chests, polished boots reflecting the sunlight. The air buzzed with anticipation, a mix of pride, rivalry, and the subtle tension that always accompanies recognition in the military hierarchy. Among the crowd stood Captain Elena Torres, a woman known for her unwavering discipline and tactical brilliance. She had risen through the ranks faster than most, thanks not only to her competence, but her relentless work ethic. She had spent countless nights reviewing mission reports, training recruits, and leading exercises with precision. Yet, despite her accomplishments, she knew that today might be different. Whispers circulated among some officers, subtle jabs about her youth, her being one of the few women in a male-dominated field, and murmurs questioning whether she truly belonged at the front of the line. Elena had learned long ago to ignore these undercurrents, but she could feel the weight of eyes on her as she stepped onto the red-carpeted aisle. Every polished boot, every ceremonial sword seemed to measure her, silently challenging her worth. She walked with perfect poise, head held high, the echo of her boots against the marble floor matching the rhythm of her heartbeat. Each step was a testament to the countless hours she had endured, the early mornings, the late nights, the sacrifices unseen by those who now whispered. The commanding officer on stage, a stern-looking general with silver hair and a deep, resonant voice, began calling the names of those being promoted. The audience stiffened, every eye following the line of officers waiting to ascend the stage. Elena's turn was approaching. She felt the subtle shift in the air, the moment before recognition, where pride and fear intertwined. Around her, other officers straightened, some with competitive smiles, others with barely concealed skepticism. She sensed the tension like electricity, a silent test of her composure. As the ceremony continued, a few officers exchanged knowing glances, muttering under their breaths. One of the younger men, Lieutenant Daniels, leaned slightly toward his colleague and smirked. "Don't think she deserves it," he whispered, his voice low enough that most wouldn't hear, but loud enough for Elena to catch the edge of it. She ignored him, focusing on the stage, on the line of officers ahead of her, and on the colonel who had trained her in her early days, a figure of unwavering respect who always believed in her abilities. Elena remembered his words from years ago. Excellence doesn't wait for recognition. It earns it quietly, even if the world doubts you. Finally, the general called her name, Captain Elena Torres. The room fell into a brief, tense silence, punctuated only by the rustle of uniforms and the low hum of the crowd. All eyes now were on her, the young, determined officer who had faced countless challenges and come out stronger each time. As she stepped forward to ascend the stage, she felt the eyes of her peers and superiors bore into her, a mixture of admiration, envy, and doubt. The polished wooden stairs seemed steeper today, each step echoing her journey. The sacrifices, the late nights, the relentless dedication that had brought her here. She reached the top, her spine straight, and met the eyes of the general. He nodded slightly, a silent acknowledgement of her accomplishments. Elena felt a brief surge of pride, tempered by awareness. Today, appearances could be deceiving. Respect, after all, was not just given on a stage, it was earned in every action that followed. Then, as she took her place, a subtle movement caught her attention. Lieutenant Daniels, standing off to the side, leaned in slightly, whispering something to a colleague. She caught the glimmer of mockery in his eyes, a moment that threatened to overshadow her achievement. And that was when the first ripple of tension began to spread, the moment that would eventually lead to a declaration that no one in the auditorium would ever forget. The stage was set, the players were in place, and the story of courage, respect, and unexpected triumph was about to unfold. The auditorium was silent, except for the echo of polished boots and the faint shuffle of papers. Captain Elena Torres had just stepped onto the stage, poised and composed, the medals on her chest gleaming under the bright ceremonial lights. Every eye was on her, some admiring, some skeptical, and a few filled with barely hidden disdain. It was then that Lieutenant Daniels, the young officer who had whispered his mockery moments before, decided to make his presence known. "Wow," he said, loud enough for nearby officers to hear. "Look at her, stepping up like she's actually earned it." A few officers snickered, the sound bouncing off the marble walls. The smirk on his face was almost theatrical, as though he were performing for an audience, but the intent was clear. He meant to embarrass her in front of the entire room. Elena's hand tightened around the folder she carried, her promotion certificate. Her jaw clenched, but she did not flinch. Every lesson, every drill, every moment of discipline had prepared her for situations exactly like this. Yet, a tinge of shock ran through her. Some officers whispered, others exchanged uneasy glances, unsure whether to intervene. "Lieutenant Daniels," the general said, his voice calm but icy, "is there a point to your comment, or are you merely testing decorum today?" Daniels laughed lightly, shrugging, clearly unconcerned. "Just making observations, sir. Can't help noticing some promotions are surprising." A ripple of murmurs spread through the audience. Elena felt the weight of judgment, not just from Daniels, but from others who hadn't hidden their skepticism about her rapid rise through the ranks. She could sense a few officers thinking, maybe she's too young, maybe she's too inexperienced. It wasn't just the words, it was the thinly veiled condescension, the collective energy of doubt and subtle mockery. It was as if she were being tested again, not for skill, but for endurance. Her pulse quickened, but she forced herself to breathe steadily. Composure above all else, she reminded herself. She knew reacting with anger would only validate their attempt to humiliate her. Just as Daniels opened his mouth to continue, a hush fell over the room. The audience could sense that the tension had reached a breaking point. All eyes slowly shifted toward the colonel standing at the side of the stage. Colonel Marcus Grant, a veteran officer known for his unwavering sense of justice and authority. His presence alone had a way of commanding respect. He stepped forward, his boots clicking firmly on the polished floor. Silence deepened. "Lieutenant Daniels!" The colonel's voice rang out, steady, controlled, yet carrying unmistakable authority. "You seem to misunderstand the purpose of this ceremony." Daniels glanced at him, a smirk still tugging at the corner of his lips. "With all due respect, sir, The colonel held up a hand, cutting him off. Every eye in the room now focused on him. "Respect is not given because of rank, Mr. Daniels. It is given because of merit, dedication, and character, and it is earned through action, not mockery in front of your peers." The room went silent again. Officers shifted uneasily. Daniel's smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. Colonel Grant's gaze moved to Elena. "Captain Torres," he said, his voice softer but filled with quiet power, "you have not only earned your promotion, you have earned the respect of every man and woman here who truly understands what leadership means. A murmur of agreement spread through the audience. Elena's shoulders relaxed slightly, though her heart still raced. She had expected challenges, but she had not anticipated the immediate public confrontation that Daniels had initiated. Daniels opened his mouth again, but the colonel's piercing gaze stopped him cold. "She outranks you. She outranks everyone present today," Colonel Grant declared, his voice echoing across the auditorium. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Officers froze. Some gasped. Daniel's face paled as the weight of the declaration sank in. Elena, though stunned, felt a surge of vindication. Not arrogance, but the quiet strength of someone who had earned her place. A few seconds later, polite applause began, growing steadily into a full, respectful ovation. The murmurings of doubt and mockery faded, replaced by acknowledgement of her achievement and dignity. Elena's eyes met the colonel's, gratitude and respect shining through. She had faced disrespect with composure, but it was the Colonel's intervention that cemented her authority in the eyes of the entire room. Even Daniels could no longer hide his shame. The audacity to mock had backfired spectacularly. He nodded reluctantly, a silent acknowledgement of her rank and merit. For Elena, the moment was bittersweet. She had triumphed, yet the reminder lingered. In the military, as in life, true respect must always be earned and defended. And with that, the promotion ceremony continued, but nothing would ever be the same. The audience had witnessed a defining moment of leadership, courage, and integrity, one that would be remembered long after the applause faded. The auditorium had gone quiet. The murmur of whispers, the shuffling of boots, the subtle tension in the air. All of it seemed to vanish the moment Colonel Marcus Grant stepped forward. Every officer, from the youngest cadet to the most senior general, felt the weight of his presence. Colonel Grant's eyes scanned the room like a hawk, sharp, unwavering, and filled with a mixture of authority and measured anger. He had seen disrespect before, but rarely in such a blatant and public form, and he had never tolerated it from anyone, no matter the rank. Lieutenant Daniels straightened, attempting to mask his unease with a slight smirk, but it faltered under the colonel's piercing gaze. "Sir," he began cautiously, "I was only—" The colonel raised a hand, silencing him instantly. His voice, when he spoke, resonated like a drumbeat across the polished marble walls. "Lieutenant Daniels," he said, every syllable deliberate, "this is a ceremony meant to honor dedication, integrity, and achievement. It is not a stage for mockery, insecurity, or petty jealousy. Captain Elena Torres has earned every accolade she receives today, and she has done so through courage, competence, and unwavering discipline." A hush settled over the audience. Some officers shifted uncomfortably, realizing how out of place Daniel's behavior had been. The general, sitting at the front, nodded subtly, recognizing the colonel's wisdom and authority. Colonel Grant's gaze turned to Elena, and for the first time, he allowed a small, approving smile. "Captain Torres," he said, his tone softening slightly, but still carrying undeniable command, "you have not only earned your promotion, you have earned the respect of everyone in this room." Then, leaning slightly forward, his voice grew louder, more commanding, "And let this be clear to all. Captain Elena Torres outranks everyone present here today." The words crashed through the auditorium like thunder. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Officers froze mid-motion. Some mouths fell open in disbelief. Daniel's face drained of color. He tried to speak, to stammer out a reply, but the weight of the colonel's authority silenced him. His smirk had vanished, replaced by visible shame. Even the audience of peers, many of whom had quietly doubted Elena's abilities, felt a sudden shift in energy. Respect, true, undeniable respect, now radiated from the room toward her. The power dynamics had changed instantly. Elena stood perfectly still, her chest rising with measured breaths. Her heart raced, but she held herself with grace and poise, the hallmark of someone who had fought every battle quietly and with dignity. She had faced disrespect before, but never so publicly, and never with such a profound vindication. The colonel's declaration had done more than correct an insult. It had solidified her authority, not through intimidation, but through undeniable truth. Every eye that doubted her moments ago now acknowledged her merit. Every whisper of ridicule faded into silence. A few seconds passed. Then, slowly, the first officer in the front row clapped. Another followed, and soon the applause swelled, echoing against the walls of the grand auditorium. It was respectful, sincere, and completely earned. Lieutenant Daniels, now painfully aware of his misjudgment, lowered his gaze. There was no mockery left in his eyes, only a reluctant acknowledgement of Elena's rightful place. Colonel Grant nodded to Elena, a subtle but profound gesture of recognition. "Remember this, Captain," he said quietly, yet with authority that carried through the room. "True leadership is not about rank or ego. It is about earned respect, courage under scrutiny, and standing tall in the face of opposition. You have proven all of these today." Elena's lips curved into a small, grateful smile. It was not triumph in arrogance. It was triumph in dignity. She had faced public disrespect, and through composure, competence, and the support of a mentor who valued justice, she had risen above it. As the ceremony continued, whispers of admiration replaced those of doubt. Officers who had questioned her capability now glanced at her with newfound respect. The audience had witnessed not just a correction of insult, but a defining moment of leadership, integrity, and empowerment. And for Elena, this was more than just a victory at a promotion ceremony. It was proof that merit, discipline, and honor would always outshine arrogance and disrespect. The stage was set for the next chapter, a story of recognition, reconciliation, and the enduring lesson that true rank is earned, not assumed. The auditorium, still echoing with applause, slowly returned to its normal rhythm, but the atmosphere had shifted, subtly at first, then unmistakably. Where once there had been whispers of doubt and quiet judgment, there was now a palpable sense of respect, acknowledgement, and reflection. Captain Elena Torres stood on the stage, her posture steady, shoulders squared. Her chest rose with measured breaths, her mind steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. She had expected challenges, yes, but the magnitude of the public vindication still surprised her. Lieutenant Daniels remained frozen near the side of the stage, his face pale, hands fidgeting at his uniform. The audacity of his earlier disrespect now seemed almost laughable in the wake of Colonel Grant's words. Every eye in the room bore into him, silently judging, silently recording his lapse in professionalism. He shifted uncomfortably, the weight of shame pressing down, the laughter he had expected from his petty joke replaced by an intense awareness of his own misjudgment. Some of the officers who had whispered their doubts about Elena exchanged uneasy glances. Slowly, they began to nod subtly, as if acknowledging the truth they had denied moments earlier. One by one, their expressions softened, replaced by admiration and, in some cases, silent regret. A senior officer, Colonel Ramirez, leaned toward his neighbor and whispered, "I underestimated her. She's remarkable." The neighbor nodded, echoing the sentiment. In those subtle exchanges, the seeds of change were planted, respect growing where doubt had once thrived. Elena's eyes scanned the crowd. She noticed her mentor, Colonel Grant, watching quietly, his expression unreadable yet tinged with pride. It was a reminder that true validation often comes not from applause, but from the recognition of those who understand the journey you've undertaken. The general presiding over the ceremony cleared his throat, signaling the continuation of the program. "Let us proceed," he announced, his voice carrying authority but also approval. "Captain Torres, please accept your promotion." As Elena stepped forward to formally receive the certificate, the audience erupted into a renewed wave of applause. This time, it was not the polite clapping of formality, it was genuine acknowledgement, a tribute to her composure, her achievements, and the courage she had displayed in the face of public disrespect. After the certificate was pinned to her uniform, she turned toward Lieutenant Daniels. Their eyes met for a brief, tense moment. There was no need for words. The lesson had already been delivered. Daniels nodded ever so slightly, a silent acknowledgement of his misstep, the faintest trace of humility finally visible in his posture. The ceremony continued, but the room had changed. Conversations began to carry a new tone. Officers discussed Elena's accomplishments openly, sharing stories of her leadership during past missions, her meticulous training, and her unwavering dedication. Where doubt had once lingered, now there was admiration. Outside the ceremony hall, the ripple effects continued. Officers posted in other areas of the base began hearing the story. The young female captain who had been disrespected, and the colonel who had publicly corrected the injustice. By evening, whispers of Elena's courage and composure had traveled far beyond the auditorium, reaching other units and even higher command. Back on the stage, Colonel Grant quietly approached Elena as the ceremony began to wind down. "You handled that with grace," he said, his voice low but firm. "Remember this moment, not as vindication, but as a reminder of the strength you carry inside. Respect is won through actions, not words." Elena nodded, gratitude mixing with quiet determination. She knew the journey was far from over. The challenges of leadership, the scrutiny of peers, and the tests of integrity would continue. But today had proven that courage, competence, and composure could turn even the harshest scrutiny into respect. The audience slowly began filing out, officers speaking in low tones, sharing their observations and newfound respect. Even the junior cadets, often intimidated by rank and hierarchy, felt inspired. Many would carry Elena's example with them, a symbol that merit and integrity always outshine arrogance and disrespect. As Elena descended from the stage, she felt a sense of quiet triumph. Not one of vanity or superiority, but a profound realization. Leadership was not about asserting power. It was about standing tall, even when others sought to undermine you, and letting your actions speak louder than words. And in that moment, the seed of inspiration had been planted, a story of courage and respect that would resonate far beyond the walls of the auditorium, echoing in every corner of the base and in the hearts of those who had witnessed it. As the last applause faded and the audience began filing out of the grand auditorium, a sense of stillness lingered in the air. The kind of stillness that comes after witnessing something extraordinary, a moment that quietly demands reflection. Captain Elena Torres stood by the stage, her promotion certificate in hand, and looked around at the officers who had just watched history unfold. The whispers of admiration, the respectful nods, and even the reluctant acknowledgement from Lieutenant Daniels reminded her of one undeniable truth: leadership is earned through integrity, not intimidation. Colonel Grant approached her once more. His voice was calm but filled with weight. "Elena, remember this. Rank and medals are important, yes, but they are meaningless without respect. Today, you've shown that true authority comes from composure, courage, and the unwavering pursuit of excellence, even in the face of public doubt." Elena nodded, absorbing every word. She realized that the disrespect she had faced, though painful, had become a defining moment. It had crystallized her reputation, not because of the colonel's intervention alone, but because she had remained steadfast, dignified, and professional. Around her, the officers were already recounting the moment. Stories of her bravery and composure would be told again and again, not just as a tale of correction, but as a lesson for all aspiring leaders. Courage under scrutiny is a hallmark of true leadership. Respect is earned, not demanded. Actions speak louder than words, especially when facing adversity. Elena's mind drifted to Lieutenant Daniels. He had intended to humiliate her, but in that moment of confrontation, he had also been given a lesson, one she hoped he would carry forward. Leadership, she thought, was not about crushing others, but about uplifting them through example. The colonel's words echoed in her mind. She outranks everyone. Not merely in rank, but in integrity, character, and courage. And that truth, visible to all, was far more enduring than any medal or promotion. 6. Epilogue: A lasting legacy. Weeks later, the story of Captain Elena Torres' promotion ceremony had traveled far beyond the walls of the base. Officers from other units shared the account as an example of professionalism, courage, and earned respect. Training seminars began including her story, emphasizing composure under pressure and merit over ego. Lieutenant Daniels, once dismissive and arrogant, had quietly sought mentorship under senior officers, including Colonel Grant. The lesson had changed him, a reminder that mistakes, when acknowledged, could lead to growth. Elena herself continued to excel, her leadership increasingly recognized at every level. She became a role model for young officers, especially women in the military, proving that merit and perseverance could overcome prejudice and doubt. One evening, as she walked past the now familiar auditorium, she paused to reflect. The polished floors and grand flags were the same as ever, but she saw them differently now. They symbolized not just rank and ceremony, but the stage upon which character is revealed. Colonel Grant's declaration had been a moment of shock, yes, but it had been far more than that. It had been a catalyst, a reminder that integrity and courage always shine brighter than arrogance and doubt. Elena looked out over the courtyard, the sunset painting the base in warm orange and gold. She thought of every officer, every mentor, and every challenge that had brought her here. And she understood clearly that true leadership is not about outshining others. It's about standing tall in the face of adversity, earning respect, and inspiring those around you. As she walked away, her medals glinting softly in the fading light, she carried with her more than rank. She carried a legacy, one of courage, dignity, and unshakable honor. The story of that promotion ceremony would be remembered not for the insult, but for the power of integrity and the courage to rise above disrespect. And in that, Captain Elena Torres had truly outranked everyone. In the hearts and minds of all who witnessed her strength,